we got bigger and started hiring, realized this is not scalable. And I had a lot of aspirations to not have this be a lifestyle business. And that's part of what led to us splitting. I think there were different directions we wanted to take things, but we went remote. And I want to say it was in like 2015, and then started hiring remotely because we thought it was cool and it was fun and we can find good talent. Who cares where they sit? And it wasn't until I want to say like 2017 that we started looking at offshoring. And I was rabidly opposed to it prior. I think my mindset was rather ethnocentric, not of intent, but just thinking that offshoring is bad because when I call the insurance company and I speak with somebody offshore, they're bad, therefore everybody is bad. That's just stupid. But I grew up a lot over the past 15 years, so it took a while. But now we're 85% offshore and we have talent in multiple countries in leadership positions. And it's one of the best things that's ever happened to our business.
My journey in our industry began at the front desk of a doctor's office. I became a biller and years later founded a medical billing company. After selling my business in 2015, I've turned my attention to sharing what I've learned with others. This is Leaders in Medical Billing, and I am Hani Gluck. Together we'll learn from leaders in our industry, explore challenges, and discover specific takeaways that you can use in your business. This show is sponsored by 4D Global, empowering medical billing companies to grow through offshore staffing. I am really excited to have John Gwyn with us today. John is the founder and CEO of Auctus Group, a financial and operations consulting firm for plastic surgeons and dermatologists. He also serves as an advisor in the RCM and RCM tech space. John is a board member for the HBMA, and we will see him at the Innovations conference soon. He serves on the Innovations Committee, and he's also the president of Brave, a nonprofit serving to educate and advocate for breast cancer communities. John, welcome. So good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Okay, so this is what you and I have been talking for quite some time. We talk a lot about tech because I think that you are one of those people that really understand the technology and you've immersed yourself in this. Tell me, what is exciting to you about the tech that you're seeing right now, and why did you get involved? Why so passionate about tech and RCM?
I don't know why necessarily, other than it just has always kind of struck a chord for me, like the technology. When I was kind of fledgling in business, I started to get my Instagram ad roll would become just random tech things for running a business. And that's when I realized I think I had a problem. But billing, or RCM, Auctus is essentially an RCM company at its core competency. About 85% of what we do is quote unquote medical billing. And so it was just kind of natural for those two things to collide for me. And I think with AI becoming more prominent in everybody's lives these days, there's certainly a lot of opportunity and a lot of plugging that's going on in the RCM space. And I've always taken demos. I've always been curious, perhaps to a fault in terms of being conservative with my time, but it interests me. I'm passionate about it. And so I feel like I've spent enough time demoing, getting to a point of maybe baiting, talking to vendors, trying to understand how I could leverage this for my business, that I somehow found myself in a space where I've done more than most have done because of my curiosity. So,
okay, that's awesome. Okay, so we're gonna unpack everything AI today, but before we do that, I really want to get to know younger John. Like, how did you even get into this business? Talk me through what happened after college.
So I was pre-med, a bio and chem double with a psych minor, and I wanted to be a surgeon. And I took a job off Craigslist that had medical in the title called medical billing. And that was kind of my survive post-college while I'm applying. And about a year later, I took another job off Craigslist for a plastic surgeon on the North Shore in Chicagoland. Got some opportunities I probably didn't deserve based on my resume, but I really brought everything in-house. They were fully outsourced for RCM and bookkeeping and a number of other, I think they had a PEO at that time, so HR. And I, again, was able to move out through the ladder, but I was a patient care coordinator for a time. I ran the billing office. I started as a biller. I even was kind of a pseudo office manager for a point, which again, I probably did not deserve based on my resume, but that really informed kind of my understanding of the physician back office. And I did not have the brass to continue to be an office manager. It can feel like a very thankless job some days when there's just a fire here and a fire there. And So I took my laptop and grabbed my buddy from fifth grade, and we started a consultancy. And that was the Auctus Group was born at 2 a.m. over at Dos Equis, looking at Latin words, and Auctus means growth. So that's where we landed.
Love it. Okay, so tell me about, is this friend still involved in your business?
He's not. I owe everything to him because I would not have done this without him, but that's probably a longer story for maybe a cocktail and a therapist or both. Be the opposite order, but he left the business in 2018, and still have some relations with him. He's friends with my brother, but it was not a serendipitous exit. So
Okay, that happens. I mean, I think the percentages of partnerships that fail are significantly high. So all good. I think everyone could relate to that. So you started this company, and tell me how you started to grow it. What happened?
we really started working with a number of surgeons in Chicagoland, and for the first like 2 years, Kyle and I were just driving to the offices, and we were kind of sitting there like a fractional billing office manager in the office for a day, or one day every 2 weeks or one day every month. And as we got bigger and started hiring, kind of realized this is not scalable. And I had a lot of aspirations to not have this be a lifestyle business, and that's part of what led to us sort of splitting. I think there were different directions we wanted to take things, but we went remote, and I want to say it was in like 2015, and then started hiring remotely because we thought it was kind of cool and it was fun. And if we can find good talent, who cares where they sit? And it wasn't until I want to say like 2017 that we started looking at offshoring. And I was rabidly opposed to it prior. I think my mindset was rather ethnocentric, not of intent, but just thinking that offshoring is bad because when I called the insurance company, I grew up a lot over the past 15 years, so it took a while. But now we're 85% offshore, and we have talent in multiple countries in leadership positions, and it's one of the best things that's ever happened to our business.
Okay, so what I like, you've done something quite unique that I think people would be intrigued by. You have,
And we've got people in about 8 different countries, including the US. And the way we got into different markets is kind of different. Like Nicaragua is a place where we have a lot of our staff, and it's not something you necessarily think of when you think of BPOing or outsourcing in the healthcare industry. But there was a group that we worked with there, and we had a number of seats, and then things didn't work out, and we kind of took our team and said, come with us. And it's been wonderful. And the group down there is amazing. And we again wouldn't be where we are today without them. We had another group we were working with in the Philippines, and that kind of was the genesis of our authorizations department. Our credentialing department started in India. And a lot of times it's with hiring through a traditional BPO and then finding somebody that we love and buying out the contract, and then starting to build our own team through maybe some personal referrals. And I will say though, sourcing is a challenge. It's not easy to find good people outside of referrals.
so with all of these people, you have 100 people in different places. I'm assuming Nicaragua, you have, more leadership, right? Is everybody still working from home? Are they working out of an office?
Everybody's remote, our entire company. We do not have any office space. And I'm actually very proud to say that the majority of our department directors are not necessarily US based. It's not by intent or by design, but I think if we're going to try to be this culture of an international workforce and actually be a team, not having US seats be the ones in leadership and everybody else is at tier 2 or tier 3 or whatever, however you want to, generalize the quote unquote pyramid. I think it's something to be proud of, because one of the biggest challenges with this is cross-cultural communication. US can be very direct and blunt and to the point, and I'm like probably the perfect example of that, versus you may find more tepid communication towards leadership in other places, or you may find that it's more important to say yes than it is to raise an issue in certain places.
Yes.
And so selfishly, I've learned so much on how to change my leadership style, or where I can change my style versus try to embed the culture of Auctus of like, this is how we communicate here, no matter where we're from. And it's allowed me to learn a ton, and I think grow a ton, but it's also necessary to blend the communication styles and teach leadership how to think about this person may not say yes right away. So you have to coax it out and make the space safe. And I feel like we've done a pretty darn good job, but we have a lot of opportunity to do better, of course.
Right. I think it's super cool what you're trying to do, and I think it's ambitious, right? And I wonder what it's like. Like, what is your day to day like trying to manage these people? Do you have people that are managing them? Like, what is that like for you?
So we're in a pod model in terms of how we work. So we have basically like a no more than a 1 date relationship between quote unquote management and subordinate. And we intentionally do not create pods that are in one specific place. We want to have blended groups. We don't have one country team here, one country team here, one there. We want people to be an Auctus team essentially. And then that just kind of rolls up. Another thing that's a little bit goofy about us that does play into how we manage is I kind of subscribe to the concept of holacracy, which was a Zappos concept from way back when, because I read Tony Hsieh's book early on, but professional stepping stone to maybe work be getting into one of these other roles. And then you'll have 6 to 8 billers. And so that group will work together. How they allocate themselves between systems and clients, obviously it needs to be planned and thoughtful, but that's not a top-down decision. That's a group decision for that pod. They have the ability to allocate themselves on a day-to-day basis or on a team basis internally, as long as we're making sure the service quality is top of the line and we're not making changes on a day-to-day basis that are going to impact a client.
Okay, let's talk about this a little bit more. Every pod has an account manager, a quality control person, and a team of posters, coders, AR people, right?
Essentially, we don't split by role of like posting versus like the billers are all full rev cycle trained, so they can do charge entry, payment, posting, AR work, and they may say you're going to do charges this week and you do payments that week, or they may have charges at the beginning of the day, payments later, and an AR at the end of the day, and that's kind of up to that group.
Okay, and so the people that are like all around billers, are they American or are you finding them in other countries? Because I find that in India specifically, they really just want to do their one function. What
Mhm.
country is providing resources that have the ability to do both?
I mean, we have billers in India, in Pakistan, in Nicaragua, in the Philippines, Guatemala, Jamaica. I think we're in Colombia now too, a little bit. But
And they're multi-trained and they're
yeah,
able. But
that's one of our biggest challenges is when they come in, people are used to this model of like, I don't know, functional model essentially.
yes.
And I
Hmm.
think most billing companies at our scale and above are functional model because we're essentially sacrificing efficiency for culture. But I think there is a service impact of building that culture. And then also if somebody can come out of being a biller at our company after a year and go get a job as a posting manager for just payments somewhere else, like I don't want to lose anybody, but I've helped them get to their next level up in life. And
Yeah.
that's a,
Yeah, I've always seen it that way too, right? When I was running my billing company, I would always say, you're much more valuable to me if you could do it all, right? And you can manage multiple accounts. But I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of a cool, different model. And if it's working, it's working, you know? Uh, that's great.
yeah, I think the challenge is as we get to the point where we really want to grow, I realize that we're kind of the odd duck and it's there's a reason most people do things a similar way, and it's monitoring productivity and it's ultimately efficiency and things like that. And so it's always I question myself, am I taking the culture thing too far sometimes? But I try to stick to my guns at the end of the day most times.
Because what you're trying to achieve is that collaborative winning mindset where if we all work together and the account is great, then we all shine, right? And we all look great.
Exactly. And also I just truly believe that if you're a payment poster and you haven't posted charges or you haven't worked AR, you may not understand the impact of like the mod 50 on 150% reimbursement. You post incorrectly, or you don't see when you post, a CO 7 or whatever, and you write something off, what that does to the AR team. So when you know the impact because you felt it, I think there's a little bit more buy-in on being accurate and correct to help your team out.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It is true. There's a lot of, that's what people that are not in the industry don't realize, right? That there is so much overlap. When you're posting a payment and you see the repetitive denials, you understand how to post a charge better that way. 100%. Okay, we could talk about that for hours, but let's switch gears to AI. Okay, a favorite topic that we talk about. So we can tell people that we have our RCM Tech Forum where we started getting together once a month and talking about technology, what's working, what's not in real time, right? Because you're running a company, I'm running a company, we're all using the same tech. And we together realized that there's not enough of of communication to the RCM people that are using the products. Why should we all be frustrated when we can all kind of share this information, which is the American way, right? In the US, we're generous, we share with one another. So talk to me through what are some of the top products that you're using right now that you want to plug or that you want to give a shout out to? And
Sure.
maybe tell us about what you've tried to use. So let's talk about all of it.
Sure. Well, to your point, I was actually talking to Jeff about this, and he coined a phrase in front of it. He called himself a bad capitalist, and I kind of like that concept of like there is so much to bill for, and there are so many clients, and there are plenty of billing companies, but I don't think any of us are going to get further ahead by being elbows up about our knowledge about this AI thing as it comes. There's going to be plenty of vendors, plenty of opportunity, and if we can share and we can all drive a little bit of efficiency and build a better mousetrap with shared knowledge. I agree. I think there's just no reason to hide it. Yeah, of the vendors that we use, and I think they're great, but selfishly, that's because I use them. I really love Docvocate. They are essentially an appeals automation tool as well as an AR workflow management tool. They've been wonderful for us to drive essentially, like if you think when you get an EOB, for the people that may not be billers out there, you get an EOB just like we all do as consumers, then you have to figure out, what do I do next? And you have to read it, and there's info, and then you decide what you do based on that info and the insurance company and the CPT codes. And so it is if-then logic. And what Docvocate allows you to do is automate that so that it reads that info and it says, is this the right appeal template? And it auto-propagates the info. You can attach really easily instead of printing things out and stapling them or faxing. And then they have some APIs where you can actually send the appeals electronically. So I estimate that it drove about 70% efficiency per appeal. And I guess in terms of the impact on a biller's day, I'm oversimplifying, but I also estimate that about 60% of a biller's day should be spent on AR, denials, rejections, and so forth. So we're saving 70% of 60%, which I won't embarrass myself by trying to throw a number out, but it's a good number.
It's significant, yes. Okay, so Docvocate, great. And you use it mostly for appeals.
Correct. Appeals, denials, you can claim status check. They have a really great workflow management tool as well that we don't use because it's not a fit for our needs. Because I'm in like 50 different EMRs every day. So my AR workflow management has to happen in a centralized system across EMRs. And like we're working off an internal like spreadsheet view essentially.
Okay. What else do you like?
I think patient RCM is another really easy nut to crack. To me, it all comes down largely to robotic process automation. And then a lot of these vendors are starting to get into predictive analytics where they can recommend the next step, but it is if-then logic, simplifying simple tasks. And patient RCM is essentially patient statements and payments. And so I think that's a simple enough workflow without a ton of edge cases, essentially, or like one-offs that anybody can tackle that if you're a billing company owner. There's multiple vendors on the market. We use two. Raxia and Inbox Health. And I think
hold on. Let's first talk about patient RCM. Does that submit patient statements? Tell us what you're using it for.
Yeah, absolutely. So the patient RCM process, essentially, if you're not using the tool, is once a month, I'm going to run patient statements and I'm going to hopefully review them to make sure that there's not a patient that has a huge credit or a patient where something accidentally got dropped to their responsibility. Or maybe I'm not even reviewing because I don't have time and this is the last thing I think about at the end of the month before I close my financial month. And it drops the paper and it gets mailed to them. So what patient RCM tools can do is to automate that process of review. So if the patient balance matches the total charged amount, do not send them a statement. That's a really easy thing a machine can do. Or in our instance, because we're in aesthetics, if the bill charge says Botox, don't send that patient a statement. That needs to be manually reviewed because maybe I went in for Botox and I didn't tell my wife that I was putting that on the family card, and you don't want that bill going home. So about 85% of patients actually pay their bills. And I think the national average, if you look it up on, the Google machine, is like 35, 40%. So it doubles the amount of payments you're getting from patients that otherwise, you're SOL, because collections agencies can't do anything these days. So
Yeah.
they've been a great partner to us. And I think the challenge with plugging up third-party tech, whether it's patient RCM or DocVacate or anybody else, is connecting them with the EMRs, because we're not the owner necessarily, the client might be. And Raxia has been very good at helping us get into systems that they may not have previously had a connection to. And then Inbox Health to me is kind of like the pioneer that started this stuff, and they've been and continue to be incredible with service quality, and the tech just works.
Okay. Okay. So now we have options. You see, the longer that we're in business, the more of these companies are going to pop up or acquire one another. Right? We've seen lots of these things happen.
Yeah.
Okay. What else do you like?
And one area I'm seeing a ton of action in is this like auto dialer, or, AI dialer. They've all got kind of different like slogans, but it's essentially, I'm going to use a bot to call the insurance company and talk to their bot, or talk to their offshore call center to get the info I need, rather than paying a human to sit on hold for 15 minutes. And a lot of these vendors, they'll cut you off after 3 inquiries, right? So then you got to hang up and dial back and listen to the lovely hold music again. So I have my questions about why focus on IVR instead of focus on an electronic call through a clearinghouse for claim status, things like that. But there's a reason that people are focusing there. And there's outbound AI, there's Super Dial, there's Prosper AI. I could sit and think of 2 or 3 others that are out there. Bodera, and I think they do have some interesting use cases. Primarily, they seem to focus on dialing for AR status, which I like, but we've chosen to focus on the authorizations end of things. And then we are testing, and I'm really, really nervous about it, but I'm also excited, but testing inbound patient calls. So if a patient calls in and wants to pay a bill, let them pay a bill with the bot, because I could extend our hours and have customer service 24/7 then.
Okay. That sounds fantastic. What company do you recommend for the authorizations?
We actually ran a bilateral, and I really like both SuperDial and Prosper for that. I also believe Outbound could achieve it, but we came across them earlier on and focused on a different project with them. So I think they're all capable, but I can validate that we had like 97 and 100% accuracy with the latter two. So they've both been great with logging, checking, and then also pulling patient benefits, because when we provide an auth to a client, we tell them how much to pre-collect essentially. And the bot can do all of that, which is essentially an hour and 20 minutes on the phone off every single auth that we do.
And do you give them a list of questions to ask, and it asks those questions?
Yeah, you kind of build the onboarding process is you kind of build a script. What does your human do? All right, can we make that an actual script essentially with if they ask this and they answer this way, then ask this question. The other thing I like is these vendors have been able to actually kind of listen to the calls essentially and build a script format for us, and then we can drive from there. And that's been exceedingly helpful, because this concept of taking what a person does and turning it into like a script, whether you think of like a development script or like a human talk track script, that process is not native to most of us. And if you tell somebody to go do it from scratch, it's hard. So to have that backbone built for you, and then you can kind of pick and choose and insert was incredibly helpful. And it escalated the timeline for us of implementation by I would estimate months.
So nobody does any authorizations anymore. You don't have humans do authorizations, or where are you at in this process?
We do. We're still kind of in the fledgling stages of implementing the auths. We validated that it works. We've done hundreds of transactions through it. But we still have our humans in the loop on all of it. So nothing actually gets approved or finalized without human eyes. I want to get them off the phones, but I don't want a robot doing everything front to back. Our coding for our auths is still with our humans. If there's any client contact, obviously that's there. And then if there are escalations or edge cases like letters of intent, or not LOAs, SCAs, the negotiation part, that all still sits with the humans.
Okay. Where do you see, you're really immersed in this space. I wish more people were as immersed in it as you are. Where do you see this going? Like if you could project 3 to 5 years from now, how do you see billing companies like yours operating? What's the tech to human ratio? How do you see this playing out?
My vision for our company and how we will use this is that it does not eliminate human labor, but it simplifies the things that you don't necessarily need a human to do and that a human might make mistakes on because it's repetitive. So I think the head count to line count or head count to receipt count or head count to volume of work essentially will decrease because one person can do more because the bot is doing, a lot of those remedial tasks essentially, and that human is becoming the validation step, right? They're the final check or taking on the complex task. But I also think that there's going to be a shift in the way the org chart looks because building these sorts of things and implementing and refining, that's going to be a job and potentially a department unto itself. And then teaching billers not only to bill, but also to recognize patterns that can then be sent to that department to rebuild. That's where I see this headed. Like I imagine we'll have a department for this in a year.
Yeah, well, we already have that for sure with the CTO heading it
Yeah,
because that's what's required at this point. Because there's so many pieces of technology creeping up,
right.
and we want to try this and we want to try that. Have you thought about creating anything on your own? Like, is there anything that you've thought was a good investment to do by yourself?
Yeah, a ton. But I think that is also kind of the problem is to invest to do this on your own. There's a pretty heavy
Price
cost.
tag, yeah.
It's if you want to go with a industry agnostic, like a thoughtful automation or outbound AI or UiPath or whatever, or excuse me, not outbound AI, but I mean, those are hundreds of thousands of dollars spends just to get this tech. And then you still have to service the tech and then the time that goes into the build. I mean, I figured I could maybe limp along with like a $300,000 to $500,000 investment, maybe. And that's why we chose to focus on third parties that we can partner with until we get to the place where we want to invest. But for me, it's just been honestly, it's been a cash flow decision.
Yeah.
So
And I think for everyone else too, right? Every other billing company, I think, is sitting in the same position. Like, do I create something by myself versus try these different products?
yeah,
From my perspective, I think that if you're a small billing company, smaller than yours, you may not have the resources to do all this testing because it's extremely time consuming. And you also need a tech department, which you may not have had before. So I still think that there's an opportunity for the offshore people to get really good at the tech, which I think is what we're trying to do to make it easier and to figure out what the tech to people ratio is. That to me is really the key, right? What works? Having these kind of conversations with people like you who are going through the pain of trying it, I think is really awesome.
yeah, I've got a lot of mistakes I can tell people about, but at the very least.
Okay, but we're talking about successes and we highlighted some good companies. So I think there's some good takeaway for people to, and if you're using an offshore vendor, to speak to your vendor and see what are they using and what's working. Because I know that a lot of us doing offshore are using a lot of these technology pieces. In fact, there's a very large EHR that there you would expect that the EHR would have developed their own tech, and they're not. They're also white labeling things that have already out there because it's so expensive. Anyway, John, what would you like to add as we're wrapping up here that we haven't already talked about?
I think I would do a shameless plug for the HBMA. I think that there's a message board there and there's a group of people that want to share. And I think that's a great place to go if you're looking for ideas. Does anybody have a tool for this? Does anybody seen success with this? What do people think of this vendor? And then I also think just opening up the mind a little bit to like talking to people in general. It doesn't necessarily need to be through them. The other, I guess, tidbit I would leave with is there does seem to be a little bit of another like segment creeping into this AI market of you can build it yourself, you can buy this plugin that does this one thing. There's a couple companies, Inabot and Magical are two that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are more where they actually will build the custom workflows with you. And then whether or not that's your IP or theirs is up to you to have a conversation about. But it seems like there are now people that are getting into like, we will build this with you for you. So it's your own custom tech, but you don't have to have the $500,000 investment necessarily.
That sounds awesome. We'll link that in the show notes. John, this was so nice. I could talk to you for hours. You're such a great resource. Whenever I need something or whenever I have a question, you're extremely responsive. You're a good friend. I appreciate you being on the show today. Where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, which I don't check much. So probably LinkedIn is the best spot. But my door is open. I can be found on the HPMA message boards, or my email is just john@auctusgrp.com. I'm an open book and happy to share and collaborate with anybody that's got ideas.
Okay. If anyone wants to join a tech committee, or a shameless plug for our webinar that we're going to be doing together in a couple of months, we're going to be talking about all things tech. So make sure to join us. Thank you so much. This was lovely.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully I didn't bore your audience too much with my acronyms.
It's a great